Good morning. This is Frank Donaldson, and would like to welcome you to our January 2017 class, class number 9. We'd like to also wish you a very happy New Year. Hopefully everyone had a wonderful Advent and Christmas season, and as we move into 2017, we're wishing everyone to have a wonderful New Year as we move forward with our Catholic school development efforts. So as we always do, let's begin with prayer. Let us remember we're in God's holy presence. Lord, we thank you for giving us the opportunity to share ideas and to develop and advance our Catholic schools as we move into and begin to celebrate Catholic Schools Week all across the nation. Keep us ever mindful of the importance of the job that we all do, whether we work in administration, whether we work as faculty, whether we work as development officers, marketing, enrollment management, volunteers, board members, parents, alums. Keep us ever mindful that it is the work that we do to continue to build your kingdom. Let us realize that this work of development is so important in order for us to stay vibrant, in order for our Catholic schools to prevail and not just survive. So as we begin to celebrate Catholic Schools Week, as we begin to move forward with many, many initiatives that many students have learned and have moved forward with on their own in their Catholic school development efforts, keep us ever mindful that the work that we do is in your name. All things we ask of you. Amen. So as we move into this lesson, once again, putting some slides up on the screen that we always put up on the screen. And I think it's very important that as we move forward, that we just remind people of a few things. Most of you are sending the information to not only me, but also to Jessica. Every once in a while, some of you send it to me, and unfortunately, I may not respond as quickly as you would like, so therefore I think it's important that you also copy Jessica on everything that you send. She is the one that is keeping a file folder on every student. You know, we have covered a lot. I was looking at all of this over the holidays and moving back, and not going to read to you, but just kind of turn some slides and kind of move on through the lessons that we have started, we've been working with, obviously starting with the philosophy and fundamentals and talking about how all this is so important to set the backdrop for our Catholic schools in terms of developing real key chapters there in lesson 5 and 6 in terms of true Catholic development and everything that is so important as we move all this forward to keep that type of customer service attitude. And so as we talk about all of this, and as we look at these titles of these lessons that we have learned and lessons that we've covered, lessons that many of you have done excellent homework assignments with, especially those of you that have done the assessment work, those of you that have begun to create that master plan for fundraising events, those of you that have created your WOW. As we look at all this, I think it's really important that as we move forward today, that we realize that there are some bedrock statements, as I often say, and once again, having worked just over the last several weeks with some dioceses, I think it's important, as I always say, to make sure we ground the work that we do with the understanding that indeed we are talking about engaging people, and we're talking about the whole idea of belonging leads to believing, and the fact that our development and advancement efforts are not just an effort done by several people or by an office or by one person, but really it is the work of everyone to make sure that we participate in some way, shape, or form in these development advancement efforts. And so I ask you to do some homework, selecting either doing something in terms of explaining how your annual appeal and drive is organized, or how you will implement your first annual fund, and what organization and processes that you will use. And so I've selected some things that I think are just to share with you from students in the class. And here's one that says we've never had an annual fund, and so because of that, in a way, they feel they're at an advantage in the sense of setting it up correctly. And so they say their first task is to increase our engagement of people, to increase the customer service attitude, to form their core team, to define their top 10 points, to make sure that they create a strategic development plan, to implement the annual fund based upon the information that we covered in Lesson 17, and then to begin to establishing this annual fund as one of the most important parts of the development efforts. And so I applaud that approach. Many times, schools we find will jump right on in and send out direct mail pieces to everyone. And yet at the same time, this is a very logical approach in terms of moving this forward. Another one says we currently do not have an annual fund as defined by the standards in this class. However, we look to move in that direction. And as I read that, and I read many, many others, there are many Catholic schools that are taking this class that are doing simply direct mail annual fund. There's one school that presented a 5-page overview of their annual fund and their organization, and how they are developing the case for support, and how they're going to use their annual fund, and how they're going to get their volunteer base done, what their financial goals are, what constituents they're going to be reaching out to, and the different ways that they're going to reach out to those constituents, all the way from face-to-face to phone calls, to direct mail, to email. A very nice booklet, a little 5-page booklet or pamphlet or whatever you might want to call it, that I think really sets them up for success. Another one talked about the annual appeal that is mailed out to the entire parish database, and once again, I heard a lot of that. Another one talked about their annual fund as a letter writing campaign. Another one talked about that there was really not much going on, and so they sent a brochure, and the particular student in the class was having some difficulty trying to move forward with all of this, and especially in terms of the processes that we have outlined, and because they're a one-person shop, and in many cases, I think with a one-person shop, you're juggling so many things. And I just, once again, is this normal? Does anyone else feel this way? And the answer is very definitely yes. I think it becomes important. That's why next lesson in February, I think, is going to really be important, because we're going to spend the entire lesson on creating your written strategic plan for development. And I think it's important that you prioritize. And I've often said, if you remember when we started with the annual fund, I made the statement that the annual fund is the single most important development dollars effort that your Catholic school could ever do. And that's why we find it so important. So all of the fundraisers, granted, can be done, but if you remember, we talked about concentrating on that annual appeal, that annual fund, that annual giving drive. Those are names that are given to it, and making sure then that you move forward with it in terms of making sure it takes priority, and that with 2 or 3 good fundraising events, eventually, maybe take you several years to get there, but I think you've got it really heading in the right direction. Here's another one that talks about their annual fund plan, and yet at the same time, there's not many major gift ask, no more than 5 per year. But although they indicate what they are doing, they also talk about, in this particular homework assignment, the process of implementing and tweaking to improve. And that is bringing back the chair structure and the class captain structure and the advancement update, and talking about challenge gifts and small coffees, and cultivating faculty and staff relations, and segmenting the giving letters. And then once again, that whole piece is so important that we realize of the one-on-one. Here's one that was kind of somewhat disheartening to me, because this person indicated that they do not have the support of the administration to push the effort to eyeball to eyeball. And because of that, it's been very, you know, haven't gotten the results that they need. And so I would just encourage to continue to move with that, maybe quite possibly take a look at some different things that you can do by way of educating your administration, whether it be you know, we'll talk about another online class we'll be starting in June. We're talking about the NCEA convention coming up. We're talking about a webinar I'm going to be doing for NCEA here coming up in March. Maybe they could take something like that and really understand it. This is another one that I really would have to learn a little bit more about it, where they put the annual appeal information in the registration packet that is given to returning and new parents starting in February. And so my only question with that was I think that's good for communication. My question is, you know, where is that eyeball-to-eyeball work then going to be done? And does it give you time really to set up the organizational structure that you really want and really need? But heard from a lot of people and a lot of good things that are going on. I think it's very important that you set up the structure, and above all, the key in terms of raising money is the key is going to be whether or not you have that major gift division in place, and we talked about that greatly in the last you know, in the last lesson. So I just want to continue to emphasize that, and then hopefully those pieces are going well. As we continue on, we're going to move now to lessons 18. If you'll notice, you should have on your screen down at the bottom, you should have a piece that says handouts, and there are 4 handouts that you need to click on and download, and I'll get to those in a minute. But let's talk about the alumni, the alumnae, whether you're all boys, whether you're co-ed, whether you are all girls. The importance of the alum base, you know, is whether you, as we talk about in the book, whether you're a secondary school or an elementary school or a pre-K through 12 school or a pre-K through 5 or pre-K to 3, or whatever your configuration, as you take a look at this, that alum base, especially, and we talk about alums, we can also, in some cases, talk about that past parents of alums, as we look at this, but as we talk about the main alum base, and this could be for a secondary school or an elementary school, and I'm thinking elementary in many cases that we're working with in this class, they're pre-K or K through 8. You know, I always ask the question, what's the win-win here? You know, many times alums we will hear from them when we work with schools and do surveys, or we do interviews, or we do an assessment. I'm getting ready to begin working with a K through 12 school here next week, and one of the questions that I'll be asking is, how familiar are you with the development advancement efforts of the school? And in that kind of question, I often will hear the answer, well, we only hear from them when they want money. They only send us the annual fund with brochure and pledge card. They send us the raffle tickets. They send us something where they want us to take a chance or buy a Christmas tree or get the spring mulch. So my question always is, where is the win-win? What is the school doing for the alums? And what I mean by that is, what is the school doing that the alum would say, this is a win for me? In other words, this volleyball tournament allowed me to come back and really enjoy, you know, playing a volleyball game with those 3 or 4 or 5, 6 classes around which I graduated. This, you know, particular opportunity during the summer at my elementary school to come back, you know, and have a little, you know, pizza party with the people that I graduated with in 8th grade was an opportunity to come back and make those connections again. You know, some schools have even gone on further and host job fairs. Some schools have even gone on and established their class agents and their class and their decade chairs and things of this nature to be able to set it up. So that's what I mean by where is the win-win. Because in working with alums, it cannot always be, you know, give us your money, you know, and nor can the social events and the reunions and the like be smoke screens for money. It has to be that genuine relationship, and that's why having alums on the core team and having alums involved in your development processes are important. Which brings that third point of the importance to the database. With your alums, you're only as good as your data. And so the ability to constantly gather that information, whether that information, be the cell phones, whether it be the emails, whether it be whatever it may be, the importance of the database becomes key. And so a lot of time needs to be spent with that. That's why we'll talk about it a little bit later in another lesson, but that's why I think it's very important. And so if someone was to come to me, and this could be elementary school, and if you're a secondary school or K through 12, you might want to use this as kind of a check system, so to speak. But if someone would come to me and say, okay, what do we need to have in place? Here we are, we don't have much of an alum effort. Then again, you may, but let's say you don't. And so I've always said there are some basics, and they're outlined in the book. But I always said the first one is having some type of organizational committee, some type of organizational group that is going to really take a look at what you want to offer and help you promote and help you communicate in terms of that organization. And so this organizational committee, maybe you've got 2 core team members, and here we go back to the core team. Maybe you have 2 core team members who are 3 that would share this. That would be what they worked with. And so maybe they become the group that's going to chair the organizational committee, and maybe that organizational committee is 10 or 15 people, and you've already got your chairs. But what do? Well, they talk about things that could bring alums back to the campus. They talk about things that alums would enjoy doing. Maybe they conduct the survey. Maybe they help with this or that or the other. But above all, you need an organizational committee that can outline what you're going to do during the 16-17, the 17-18, the 18-19 school year, the organizational committee. And in many cases, when you first start with this, the derivation of the genesis of this takes place by recommendations from the administration, by recommendations from the people working in development to get that started, to get that rolling, okay? It may evolve into an alumni board. I don't know. That's left up to you, whether or not you want to go in that direction. But above all, I strongly believe that whatever organizational committee, whatever board, whatever you want to call it, I strongly believe that alum group, that organizational group, has to be tied directly to the school. They cannot be a lone ranger out there operating by themselves. I think that's very important to understand. Obviously, the database, we've talked about it, is so important. The communication, being able to set up a communication, whether that is electronic communication. I was just asked in visiting with a school up in the Rhode Island area. I was asked recently what communication pieces are most important, and how often should you communicate with your alums? And I've often said that it's important that you communicate, with your alums 7 times during the course of the year. I think that as you look at those 7 times, several of them can be electronic. I think several of them can be, 2 of them can be hard copies, but I think you need to reach out and have conversations too. That becomes the importance of the out-of-town, the out-of-state alumni gatherings. Especially if you're a secondary school, that becomes the importance of the alums coming on your campus, for a volleyball game or a picnic or a bowling event or whatever that is going to connect them. That becomes the value of the reunions. So you can interact. You meaning the pastor, the principal, the president, the development officer, the volunteer development officer, the 1-person development officer, the 6 development officers working in the advancement office, whoever, but you can interact. And then obviously with that, you have the alumni event. We think, especially on the elementary school level, that elementary schools need to have one major event each year that brings all the alums back together. Now, many times the high schools already have the homecoming built into the football games, which is fine, or basketball, or baseball, or volleyball, or soccer, or whatever. But my point is the alumni event becomes important, because that gives a rallying point to get people back, and you can promote it every year, and you can talk about it throughout the year of when it's going to be. Obviously, this leads to an alumni association as you deal with the organizational committee, as you deal with your communication, that there's some type of alumni association. And you can build this around all kinds of things. We have, different ways to brand the alumni association. And from that alumni association can get feeder systems into your organizational committee. helping with reunions, everything like this. So I think the components there, as we look at it, will lead you then, with the previous slide, will lead you to social activities, whatever they may be, will lead you to reunions. And once again, I think the school and the alum class need to work hand in hand in collaboration with reunions. I do not think you give your list to the people running that reunion and say, here, go have it. I think you need to help them as much as you can. You need to provide resources for them, whether it be saying Mass before the reunion, whether using the school for the reunion, providing the database, staffing it, helping them communicate. Do whatever you can, but build that relationship. It is a wonderful vehicle for you then to move forward with, where you can build relationships with those people in that classes. And from that, you get the next is your class agents. Some schools even have decade chairs and class agents, which allows for wonderful communication. And of course, making sure you establish that email and the social media pieces, that we'll briefly look at it in the next lesson. So as you look at that alum piece, I think it's important, going back to the other slide, that the organizational committee, making sure you have a good database, you're communicating 7 times a year, you've got the alumni event, you can lead to an alumni association if you want, and social activities, sports activities, whatever it is, but I'm mainly trying to get these folks back on the campus. And once again, that would be for people who just graduated, 9th graders in high school now, coming back to the elementary school for a volleyball game during the Christmas holidays, something like that. Alumni reunions, the class agents, the emails, and the social media. I think that is really built in, because when you can do this, then you're really beginning to shift that culture of a win-win culture with the alums. And what I mean by that is that, you're helping them, you're providing them with some really valuable activities, valuable opportunities for them to really enjoy getting back to the school, seeing teachers, and above all, as you bring your alums back, make sure that the faculty and the staff that were there when they were there, those ones that really resonated well with those classes, try to engage them and have them come to that volleyball game, that reunion, just for a little while, just to say hello. It connects back, to the school. Really important. Now, with the handouts that are down that you should have, one is called Alumni Informational Gathering Session. It's a Word document. Alum is the next one is called the Alum Invite Letter, the Alumni Forms, and then Informational Gathering Agenda. So let me explain what this is. This is not in the book. This is something that we as a company have done with numerous Catholic schools across the country, both on the secondary school level as well as on the elementary school level. And I think, once again, you look at this on the elementary school level, and this may be able to be done in groups of, let's say, 5 classes at one time. Here's the purpose. The purpose of this is to get your alums back on campus so you can gather information. And what I mean by gather information is, as you look at the letter of invite, one of the main focuses of the letter of invite says, that you have realized that your alums have done outstanding things in high school and college and beyond, in the business world, in the civic world, in the family world, in the Catholic parish world, done wonderful things, and in many cases you don't know about it. And so therefore you're trying to really invite a group of people to come back and be part of that. And so what we always say is to take a look at each class, and if you want to do it in groups of classes, I would not do more than 3 to 5 if you're going to group them together, and that depends upon the size of the graduating classes. I mean, if you're a high school and you graduated from 200 or 300 students or 150 students, then obviously you want to go class by class by class. But if, the main thing is to select those anywhere between 15 and 20, okay? So let's say you had a graduating class of 30, then obviously you'd want to group together 3 to 5 classes. But invite those 10, 15, 20 who live within geographical range of the school, invite them to come back to the school And basically what you're doing is you read that piece called Alumni Informational Gathering Session. When you read that piece, you'll understand we're trying to bring people back. We're trying to gather information. Now, there are some schools, and I think you really need to pay attention to this. In that document, I do indicate that there can be some ranking and rating depending upon the culture of your schools. I have had a number of schools who have done this very successfully, and I've had other schools that said, I'm not going to touch this, I don't want to go down that road, whatever. Let's take it from the standpoint of you do not want to go down the road of ranking and rating. Okay, let's take it from that stance first, then we'll go to the ranking and rating step second. Okay? When people come, what you want to have, and you look at the agenda for that evening, or that morning, or that luncheon, whatever it may be, the agenda is you want to give an update on the school, what's exciting things going on. Maybe the principal can do this, 5-10 minutes, answer any questions, whatever. And then you want to put the class list in front of them, and basically, with as pertinent information as possible, meaning, name, address, et cetera, so they know where, and then in groups of 10, if I was facilitating, I would say something like, okay, what we're going to do, if you'll notice in the graduating class, of let's say 2000, we had 110 graduates. So we're going to go through, in groups of 10, we're going to go through the list. And here's what I'm asking you. As you look at these names, and you look at these addresses and phone numbers and emails, as you look at this basic information that we have in our database, first of all, I want you to say, to your knowledge, is this information correct? But secondly, the main thing we're asking is, can you share some information about this alum with us? New job, new promotion, just got married, just moved, won this award, is now doing this, is in this profession, has X amount of children, married so-and-so, is working now as a whatever with their Catholic church, is working in the civic community doing this, that, or the other, wrote a book about this. Whatever information you can share with us, we would like to record it. And basically what we're going to do with that information is make sure we keep it in terms of our alum efforts, but quite possibly call them and say to that alum, Mary, I understand, we've heard that you just did yada, 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 and we'd like to kind of feature you a little bit in our next newsletter. And could we just gather a little bit further information, if you don't mind? And we'd like to be able to we're kind of, showing off our alums, so to speak. And so, once again, that's a wonderful proactive way of getting alumni information. Instead of you waiting to hear or waiting for you to get the information, you're calling that alum. So you go through in groups of 10. Now, having sat in on hundreds of these, sometimes it can be, not always, it can be a little slow starting. But once it gets going, you will find that people really, really have a lot to share. They really do. They have a lot to share, and you can update your database, you can get new information, you can find out much more about, what people are doing. So let's say you went on that approach and did not even approach the ranking and rating, and that's a very easy process. And at the end of going through all of that, okay, you've gathered a lot of information. And then you hand the people at the table, let's say if you invited 15 or 20 people and you got 7 people at the table, you hand them this little involvement form, that's one of the handouts here, where they could check off of ways they'd like to be involved in the alumni efforts at your school. And so that becomes very important information too, because they're seated at the table. Not only have they come, but they're also, we find, 90% of them are very willing to stay involved. Okay? All right, let's switch gears. With those schools that have done the ranking and rating, as you go through those 10, here's the way it would be presented. As we take a look at all of this, and we've gone through and listened to everything about these alums, the last little piece that we'd like you to do with the spreadsheet that you have in front of you is we'd like for you to use a number ranking in terms of involvement. And so if you feel that that you know this alum and you think it's really important that we invite them to be involved in the school in some way, maybe they could serve on the board, maybe they could serve on the core team, maybe they could serve on helping organize this or that or the other, then put a number 1 next to their name. If you think that we should invite them, but you're not quite sure, you don't know, but you say, hey, maybe they'd be willing to help, maybe. Now, number 1 says very definitely. I know them. They've said they want to get involved. Number 2 is maybe. Number 3 is don't waste your time. So if you're able in the class list, you may be able to do this for 2 people. You may be able to do this for none. You may do it for 15. Put 1, definitely invite. 2, possibly. 3, no. Don't waste your time. And don't waste your time. Maybe they live in another state, 5 states away. Okay. The other piece that some schools have done successfully, I would say more opt not to do this, but I have had those that do it, is what we call the ABC ranking. And the ABC ranking is you can divide this and configure it any way you want to. The one I recently did up in a diocese in the Northeast with a high school, I said, in terms of this, as we take a look at financial possibility of giving, the school is moving toward a capital campaign over the next several years, and so we're just trying to identify people we need to be connecting with. And so if you feel comfortable, would you quietly, confidentially, with no discussion, put an A next to a person's name if you think that they would be capable of considering a gift of $1,000 a year every year to the annual fund, $1,000 or more every year to the annual fund? Would you put a B next to a person's name if you think they could possibly give a gift between $250 and $500, $700, somewhere in there? And would you put a C next to people's names you think that quite possibly they could give a C, a gift of $10, $15, $25, $50, $100 to the annual fund? So ABC, these are very rough barometers. They're not scientific. We're just trying to get a read on people in terms of involvement. If you don't feel comfortable in doing this, please don't do it. If you can only do 1 or 2 or 3, then please do that. Now, that's the ranking and rating part that some people do. I would say the majority, but not by much. I'd say 60% do not do that, and 40% do it. So that's left up to you. That's left up to your culture of whether or not you want to go down that road. Regardless, make sure you get that involvement form. That involvement form becomes really, really important, in terms of that, okay? Here's a question or a comment. I've been encouraging school administrators to track student phone numbers since they change email addresses more often than phone numbers. Is this a good idea? Probably the most important thing is to get those cell phones. Yes, I agree 100%, because with cell phones you can do all the texting, you can do all kinds of things. Obviously having email addresses is good, but I agree, they change. My daughter's a freshman in college now, and her email, although she has an old one, but she has now an email that's applicable to the college that she goes to. So yeah, I agree. But if she hadn't changed her phone number, her cell phone, since she got it in high school. So yeah, I think that's a great comment. So in the alum piece, once again, this piece here is the slide in front of you is not in the not in the book, but it's something we've done that I find to be very, very successful. We've probably had 100 or more schools go through this, and it really is a proactive way of getting alums involved. So I really encourage you to do that. I really do. As we move to lesson 19. Stress the value and use of social media. As the days go by, I think we all understand, whether or not we like it or not, that social media is going to be a major way that we're going to communicate with our constituent base. Whether this is through text messaging, whether this is through Facebook, whether this is through Twitter, whether this is through YouTube, whether this is through, you name it, LinkedIn for some professionals, so to speak. There are all kinds of things. I guess the key with all of this, though, is to realize that back when I started in this 27 years ago, we had limited tools in the toolbox, and now we have a lot. We have a lot of tools in the toolbox. But this is a whole new way of marketing, a whole new way of learning, a whole new way of reaching out to people. I think it is so important that we realize that. You know, it's not to take the place of. I think it once again, the use of social media allows us to make sure that we continue to communicate using the various methods. You know, how many people tweet that are 60 and 70 years old? I know our president does, but I'm talking about the ability to segment the communication, the ability to realize that it's so important. Whatever we do, it becomes, a lot depends upon what I just call creating remarkable content, and that's key. And so I always like to refer to this book called Inbound Marketing, and they maintain that most people today that are dealing, especially with our graduates, they use, you know, Google as a search engine. I'm sure many of you use that. They blog. You know, the whole social media sphere. They believe that people even visit websites, and the websites have all the social media icons on them, because, you know, in visiting the website, they can if it's interactive, you know, that's why I often say, when I look at websites of Catholic schools, I say, is it interactive? You know, does it have compelling content that people want to consume? You know, and so, as we've seen, you know, over and over again, you know, what's interesting to me, and I have talked with a bunch of people in the field. You know, I'm one of these people that for years and years and years, and still do like my morning paper. Back about 3-4 years ago here in New Orleans, one of the major newspapers, really the major newspaper, decided that they were not going to deliver a morning paper every morning. And so they were going to start delivering it 2 times a week, and everything else was going to be online. And so, you know, like many people, a competitor came in and started delivering a paper every morning, and of which I still receive. But what I've noticed in the last year is, even though I get that physical paper I can sit down with my cup of coffee, many times I will not have the time to do that, and I will look at my iPhone, and I will download that e-edition of the Times-Picayune, and I will read that in a matter of 10 minutes just to catch up on news. And back when they went to that, I said to myself, I'll never read a newspaper, you know, on my iPhone. And I find myself doing it more and more. Now, what's my point? My point is, I think as we continue along, and I've talked to others about this, and I know I'm not in the minority, as we continue along, we find that more and more people, you know, Catholic schools are realizing the value of the use of social media. They have someone with their Facebook page for the school. They have a Twitter account for their school, and they have someone on a daily basis that is managing that. You know, they're managing. Those are the 2 pieces I see in Catholic schools the most. You know, the Twitter account and the Facebook page. And I think it becomes important, as you look at this, that we be ready for that. You know, and so we know with Facebook and we know with Twitter there are millions and millions and millions of people who follow it. LinkedIn, I just put that down because sometimes on the professional level, between development officers, I know I have, I don't know, about 11 or 1,200 people on my LinkedIn account, and I would say 80% of them are development people, and pastors, principals, presidents, development officers, etc. So it is good from that perspective. You know, not in terms of the school marketing perspective, but, you know, as you look at it, you know, you have the ability to do all kinds of things, you know, with social media. And I hope that you're looking at that as an opportunity. I hope that you're looking at that as a way to really continue to use another tool in the communication toolbox. Don't let it dominate you. To me, and you've heard me say this before, the real true bedrock of communication is always going to lie in the ability for you to go face-to-face. That becomes the key to it. However, the ability to use Facebook, Twitter, especially those two, to be able to tweet out what your volleyball team just did, what your 8th grade basketball team just did, what you are doing with this new Makers Lab that you have just opened up, what you're excited about with this new, whatever it may be going on your campus. I think that becomes important. And so when you get people to follow you, when you get people that are, going to recognize now, but the key is to go back what I said earlier, and that's what this inbound marketing book indicated. The fact that, look at the last two words on this slide. The content must be remarkable. It must be remarkable. It cannot be mundane. It has to be remarkable. It has to be something, oh, really? It has to be that type of information. And so I think it becomes important that we stress the value and we use social media as another tool in the toolbox. And once again, Facebook and Twitter are the ones that I see the most, especially in Catholic schools. And I encourage that you have people that are in charge of that in your Catholic school. That if you have a Facebook page, I went to some Facebook pages on the website of a Catholic school, and nothing's been posted since October. Well, why have it then? Why have it? If you're going to have a Twitter account and you're going to ask people to follow you on Twitter, then you got to tweet out every other day or every day or every third day, or do something where it's remarkable content where you really can have people that, but once again, it doesn't take the place of anything. It just simply supplements your brand out in the marketplace. Lesson 20 is a lesson that probably has received more comments from the book than out of any lesson that I think is in the book. And we've talked about this, but with this, I kind of break it down. I break it down into levels. And so we talk about how a Catholic school invites the gifts. How do you invite the gifts? And how the constituent base gives the gifts, and then how the school receives the gifts. And that all makes up what we call a culture of giving. And so what we've done in the book, in Lesson 20, we have broken it down where we basically have said in a level 1, there is little or no culture of giving. Schools function, as I say, mostly hand-to-mouth. There's tuition, a fundraiser, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, but basically the folks that could get involved, your parents, your alums, your parishioners, grandparents, parish parents, business community, major donors, they have not been invited in a meaningful way. And no one is really invited except to buy a raffle ticket or something like that. And so there's nothing personalized. So in terms of inviting, there's nothing personalized. There's nothing that is unique. It's the way you've always done it, and with the strong emphasis then on doing the same things you've always done. That culture is really a culture that really is not moving forward. And then in terms of receiving, there's very little acknowledgement. So we call that level 1. And we find, and this is not a knock, it's not a criticism, but just in terms of our working with a number of Catholic schools, we find that there are more than enough schools in this level 1 than we'd like to see. Level 2 is what we call the basic culture of giving, and where you're doing a lot of quantity inviting. And by quantity inviting, the bulk mail, you're mailing out, you're doing an annual fund and you've got 1,000 alums and you're sending a letter, a pledge card, and a brochure. It really is a quantity kinds of thing. Not a lot of quality here. It's basic. It's basic. On the giving, it basically is what has been done, very similar to level 1. In receiving, there is some acknowledgement. There is some acknowledgement. Maybe there's a form thank you letter that's sent out. Personalized, yeah, but nobody receives a thank you eyeball to eyeball or a phone call. So we say that's a basic culture of giving. It's basic at level 2. A lot of Catholic schools are right here. And so through these lessons, I'm hoping, and I know some of you are already here, so I'm not negating that at all, but I'm hoping that we can all move toward these next 2 levels. Level 3 we call the intermediate culture of giving. In terms of inviting gifts, this is moving toward eyeball-to-eyeball invitations with creative ways for people to become engaged. This would be the core team. And by inviting, it doesn't just mean, money. Inviting people personally to be part of your core team, inviting them to be part of your, and we'll see in the next lesson, your development advisory committee. Inviting people really to become involved, eyeball to eyeball. In terms of people are giving their gifts and what they enjoy sharing with that school. In other words, you're saying, we want you to become involved. You have a skill set in this, or are you really interested in this? We want you to give. Belonging leads to believing. We want you to give in terms of what you enjoy. Not by gift. Don't just think that I mean money. Okay? And receiving. There's excellent acknowledgement. There's appreciation, there's affirmation, there's recognition. And so that level 3, that intermediate culture of giving, and it's all in lesson 20. I don't want to sit here and read lesson 20 to you, but it's all in lesson 20. And then level 4 is that advanced culture of giving. This is the height. This is a few Catholic schools that we've worked with this year have this, and when they do, it's remarkable what's going on. The inviting is mostly personalized, almost all one-on-one. A lot of personalization. They're the ones that are reaching out. They're the ones that are visiting people in their homes. They're the ones who are inviting to receptions. They're the ones that are inviting to cups of coffee meetings, that bring in new people. They are the ones that do as much personalized work as they possibly can and really profit by it in the sense of they are really realizing that this is the way to go. And so they make it a point, to move in this direction. They make it a point when new people come on board that they, educate them on this is the modus operandi, and then people are creative in giving their gifts. They are able then to give creatively. They're able to, instead of just saying give to this, give to whatever, you're inviting people to be part of the strategic plan, and they then can create ways that things can be funded. And the receiving, just excellent acknowledgement. Just appreciation, affirmation. Let's say 2, 3, 4, 5 people are really key givers, not only of money but time, wisdom, expertise, and so maybe there is a special breakfast or a special luncheon for these 5 or 10 people, or special dinner, or a one-on-one, or whatever it may be, making sure everyone gets thanked. But once again, that whole level 4 is that advanced culture of giving that I think becomes, super important if indeed we're going to move, away from just doing things the way we've always done. And so, with that culture of giving piece, that advanced culture of giving piece, what we see over and over again is the ability of the school to recognize that, gosh, you may be at a certain level now, but certainly with some benchmarks you can take a look and see how this can improve. So as we look at that, culture of giving, one of the things that I think will be important for you to ask, and this is not going to be a homework assignment, but I think it will be something that would be important for you to ask after this lesson. Where are you? Are you at level 1? Are you at level 2? Are you at level 3? Are you at level 4? If you're at level 1, what are you doing to get to level 2? If you're at level 2, what are you doing to get to level 3? If you're at level 3, what are you doing to get to level 4? So I think, that culture of giving, and you can tell all of this is built around, this whole idea of engaging people, this whole idea of belonging leads to believing. This whole piece is built around being able to move in that direction. Okay? So as we take a look at these different levels, just kind of ask yourself that. Okay? Kind of ask yourself that. As we move from January to February, and we will take a look at that next lesson in just a minute. As we move from this, we'd like for you in your homework, I'd like to hear from you on how you use social media. One to three paragraphs that explains how you use social media to communicate with your school's constituents. That'll be very interesting. And the next, or 1 to 3 paragraph document that explains all of your alumni events, activities, processes, communication tools, and then, my mistake, yes, it is a homework assignment. Explain your school's culture of giving, level 1, 2, 3, or 4. So complete one of these. Complete one of these. I think all of these will be valuable. I think a good cross-section of these is what we're seeing when we give choices like this. But I really would like to be able for you to share that. I think it's important. And especially as you look at these 3 pieces we're looking, very interested to see how you're using social media. And if you're going to do that alumni event, activities, processes, communication tools, maybe in there include, is there something really working well, really great going for you that you'd like to mention? And then finally explain that, where do you find your culture of giving? 1, 2, 3, or 4, okay? In our monthly presentations, as we move toward the wrap-up, the last 1/4 of our classes, we're going to spend our next webinar, so to speak, on creating the written strategic plan for development. We're going to spend the whole lesson. Many Catholic schools have a strategic plan, a long-range plan, a 5-year plan, a SIP plan, accreditation plan. Very few have what's in lesson 21, creating the written strategic plan for development. We're just wrapping up, working with several schools, getting ready to begin with several schools, helping them put this together. And so I'm going to use some of those examples, but I really believe that it's important that you have a written plan of action. And we're going to gear it toward the 17-18 school year. And we're going to show you how to go through it. We're going to show you how to do it. And hopefully that'll be something you'll be able to move forward with. In March, we're going to spend a lot of time on the capital campaign, proper preparation and organization. In terms of my work right now, I would say that's 70% of my work right now that I'm doing, running probably 5 or 6 capital campaigns right now for parishes or schools. So I'd like to share with you some of those experiences. And then the ability to fuel the endowment, which I tie those 2 lessons together because what we have found in the last 10 years is that we have some capital campaigns where one of the case points is the endowment. In fact, I'm leaving here right now going to a meeting, a luncheon meeting, where one of the capital campaigns we're getting ready to kick off for a high school is going to contain about a $5 million endowment component. And that obviously is going to be fueled by both capital gifts as well as planned gifts. And then finally, the last class will be on Friday, April 28th, and that will be lesson 24, open to change and shifts in thinking, exploring new sources of revenue, and then some parting thoughts as we look at this. I mentioned in an email to you that last week, last Wednesday, I visited with Sister Angela at the University of Dayton, and we were really spent a couple hours together, and we really were excited at the end of the meeting. We have agreed to a really strong, solid partnership with UD and this is going to be called the certificate program, in which for every 10 hours of instruction, we are going to, UD is going to give a continuing education unit, so those of you that have stayed with this class, I know we've dropped some because of schedules, and they're all understandable, but those of you that have stayed with this class and have kept up with it, I realize sometimes some homework assignments can be missed, but we do realize with the spreadsheet we get after every webinar, after every class, we can see who was there and how many minutes you stayed online with us. Then we are planning to give 2 continuing education units along with a certificate from the University of Dayton. And this will be done probably in May or June once we iron out all the kinks, get all the logistics right, make sure the names are all spelled correctly. And this can be a certificate that you can present to whomever. In terms of completion, it's a certificate of completion with the number of CEUs that you may have. And it comes from, I mean, a really nice certificate from the University of Dayton. As we look to the future, UD and ISPD will continue this partnership, and we plan to open up with an online class. We're thinking of making this 6 months instead of a year. We're going to move with an online class, and with the online class, there will be a fee, and basically we're looking at a fee of $75 to $100. And as I indicated in the email, we're using that to pay for the administrative costs at UD's end and also on our end. Any money left over is going to go to marketing and promoting the program. But University of Dayton is going to take care of all the registration. They're going to take care of all the money part of it. They're going to take care of all the distribution of the certificates. And we on our end will take care of all of the homework assignments and all of the correspondence and communication and setting it up and everything of this nature. So we're looking at doing another online class beginning in June 2017. We also are going to do looking at doing a open to doing on-site in dioceses. We just completed a actually 5 3-hour workshops with 5 hours for homework in the Diocese of Tallahassee, Pensacola. And so those 10 schools that went through that piece, they had about 5 or 6 people from each school. We were there 5 times in person, and we were able then to, we'll be awarding them. They went through the same thing. And then we're also in the summer of 2018 looking to do on the University of Dayton campus for a week with a 3-hour class every day for 5 days. We're looking to do another piece. So we're looking at online, we're looking at on campus at UD, we're looking at on site with dioceses to move forward with this. We're also excited in that NCEA has invited us to put together a workbook that will go with the book. And so we're going to be working on that and hopefully have that ready sometime over the next 4 to 5 months. And that'll allow people to get the book as well as the workbook, and we can use that in online classes as well as in different venues. A lot of it will be worksheets and things like this that you've been working on, and a lot of the homework assignments will come from that. And so anyway, we're excited about this. I just wanted to share that with you and let those of you that have stayed with us, let you know that that you would be a part of that certificate program, that completion program, and I think that's exciting. Couple of questions. Are we meeting at NCA in St. Louis? Let's see here. Let me see here. Make sure I don't have any. Oh, a bunch of questions. Let me see if I can get to them before we wrap up. Okay, here's one. Can you give an example of really good school websites? Yeah, I can. I'll do that in my follow-up when I send the PowerPoint to you and the YouTube link once we get all that. So sometime in the next week you'll get all that, and I can certainly send that along to you in terms of really good school websites that I find to be good. How how does a small school keep up with all this? And I think that's going to be one of the main purposes why I want to spend so much time in the next lesson, creating that written strategic plan for development. I think the key is making sure that with that you have prioritized and you make sure that the priorities are clear. You're not trying to solve world hunger, but yet you're trying to do those 3, 4, or 5 things that you can do very well. And I think that becomes important. I realize it is hard to monitor. It's hard to keep up with, and I think it's important, though, that as you look at all this, you decide on what is important for you and your school. And so that school that I read earlier to you that is going to establish a core team, that's going to come up with their wow, their top 10 selling points, that is going to build that customer service culture. You know, those are the kinds of things. Those are the beginning steps that I think that are really key to make all this work. I really do, and I think that's important. Another one says we've been really successful in connecting with our alum through Facebook, and I just want to encourage you that if you're not doing that, that you quite possibly see if you can move in that direction. I think that is a wonderful way of staying connected to alums. I know that some schools have had a lot of success with their Twitter account, and I think with that Twitter account you can look at that and Facebook and really make some things happen by way of communication. So let's see, 1 or 2 other questions and we need to wrap it up. Okay, if I didn't get to them, then I'll try to answer them in response once we get the spreadsheet in. We're meeting at NCA in St. Louis. We're in the process of trying to set that up. I can let you know in February. Hopefully we can have a little reception. I need to know a little bit if you're going to be going. So if you could, sometime in the next week or 2, once you hear from me on all this, if you could just shoot me an email and let me know if you're going to be there. I'll be presenting, I've forgotten what day it is, I think maybe Wednesday. So we can certainly take a look at maybe how could we get together. If we have enough people going, I think it'd be great. I think it'd be great to share some things. All right. So hopefully this has been helpful. Thank you so much once again. We have those folks that are the regulars that have stayed with us, and I really am enjoying seeing the progress that many of you are making. Okay. So happy Catholic Schools Week in terms of how you're going to celebrate it, and we hope that you will use every possible advantage to shout to the top of the mountain the value of our Catholic schools. So thank you once again, and we look forward to working with you in the future.